I'm Margaret Thompson, 68, and I couldn't believe my ears. There I was, reaching for extra pies in the garage during Thanksgiving, when I heard my 3 adult children planning to dump all 8 grandkids with me for 2 weeks at Christmas while they vacationed in the Bahamas. The kicker? They were going to tell me they were working. After decades of sacrifices, this felt like the ultimate betrayal. They had no idea I'd already booked a luxury cruise with my friends months ago. After 68 years of being the nice one, it was finally time for Grandma to play dirty. If you've ever been taken for granted by family, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Hit that like button if you've ever had to teach someone a lesson about respect, and subscribe to join me for more stories about family, karma, and standing up for yourself. Now, let me tell you how this all unfolded. To understand why this hurt so deeply, you need to know a bit about our family. I spent my entire adult life devoted to my children. I gave up a promising career in accounting to be a stay-at-home mom when Jessica was born. My husband Thomas and I agreed it was the right choice for our family, though I sometimes wondered what might have been. Thomas was a wonderful provider and partner until cancer took him 5 years ago, leaving me alone at 63 to figure out who Margaret was beyond wife and mother. My oldest, Jessica, is 42 and a high-powered marketing executive. She's married to David, and they have twins, Lucas and Lily, who are 12. Jessica has always been ambitious and organized to a fault, scheduling her life down to the minute. The twins are overscheduled with activities, and whenever there's a conflict, guess who gets the panicked call to pick them up or watch them? Me, of course. Michael is my middle child, 39, a corporate attorney who works 80-hour weeks. He and his wife Rachel have Emma, 10, and Jack, 8. Michael inherited his father's work ethic, but unfortunately none of Thomas's ability to separate work from family time. He's perpetually distracted, checking his phone even during the rare family dinners they attend. Rachel is sweet but overwhelmed, as she also works full-time as a physical therapist. My youngest, Sarah, is 36 and the most sensitive of the 3. She's a pediatrician married to Daniel, and they have 4 children: Sophia, 7, Noah, 5, Ethan, 3, and baby Amelia, just 1. Sarah at least attempts to apologize when she asks for favors, but with 4 kids, those requests come frequently. Daniel travels often for work, leaving Sarah solo parenting most weeks. I love my grandchildren fiercely. Each one is unique and precious to me. Lucas is a science whiz who reminds me of Thomas. Lily is a budding artist with incredible talent. Emma is my bookworm, while Jack is all energy and sports. Sophia is the little mother, always helping with her younger siblings. Noah makes me laugh with his wild imagination. Ethan is still finding his personality, though he shows signs of being quite the engineer with his building blocks. And baby Amelia, with her curious eyes and sweet temperament, is the family's little sunshine. But here's the pattern that developed after Thomas died. My children began taking my time for granted in increasing measure. At first, it was emergency situations, a child care provider calling in sick or a last-minute work crisis. I happily stepped in, but over time, emergencies became regular occurrences. Weekend getaways planned without checking if I was available. School holidays where they'd simply assume I had nothing better to do than provide free childcare. What my children didn't know, or rather, never bothered to ask about, was that after a year of profound grief following Thomas's death, I had gradually built a new life for myself. I joined a book club with 5 wonderful women who became close friends. I volunteered twice a week at the local literacy center, teaching adults to read. I took up watercolor painting and discovered a hidden talent. And most surprisingly to me, I started dating Richard Anderson, a charming widower I met at a community garden project. Richard was kind, funny, and understood the complicated emotions of finding joy after losing a spouse. We'd been seeing each other for almost a year now, taking things slow and steady. My children had met him briefly at a couple of family gatherings, but dismissed him as Mom's friend without showing any real interest in our relationship. The biggest thing my children didn't know was that 6 months ago, Richard, my best friend Eleanor, and 4 other friends had convinced me to join them on a luxury Christmas cruise through the Caribbean. It would be my first real vacation in over 20 years. I'd paid the non-refundable deposit using some of the life insurance money Thomas had left me, telling myself he would want me to enjoy life again. I'd been so excited about it, buying new summer clothes in December and getting my passport renewed. Yet somehow, despite mentioning the cruise several times to my children, none of them seemed to register that I had plans for Christmas. When I brought it up, they'd nod absently or change the subject. It was as if they couldn't compute that Mom might have a life that didn't revolve around their needs. So when I heard them casually plotting to dump all 8 grandchildren with me so they could enjoy a child-free holiday, something inside me snapped. This wasn't just about Christmas. This was about years of being taken for granted, of being seen as a convenience rather than a person with my own life and dreams. As I stood there in my garage, pies forgotten in my hands, I made a decision. This Christmas would be different. This Christmas, I would finally put myself first. Thanksgiving had always been my holiday. Even before Thomas passed, I insisted on hosting the entire family at our colonial-style home in Connecticut. This year was no exception, with all 3 children, their spouses, and my 8 grandchildren gathered around my carefully set table with the good china Thomas and I had received as wedding gifts 45 years earlier. Dinner had gone well. The turkey was perfectly browned, the sides abundant, and even picky little Noah had cleaned his plate. While everyone lounged in the living room digesting their meal and watching football, I remembered the extra pumpkin pies cooling in the garage refrigerator. I'd made extras because they were Thomas's favorite, and keeping the tradition alive felt like having a piece of him with us. As I approached the kitchen on my way back from the garage, balancing 3 pies, I heard my children's voices. They must have come in for coffee or leftovers. I was about to announce my presence when Jessica's words stopped me cold. "So I've been looking at resorts in the Bahamas," Jessica said, her voice carrying that efficient tone she used when presenting marketing strategies. "There's an amazing adults-only all-inclusive with a spa package. David and I could really use the break." "Wait, for Christmas?" Michael asked. "What about the kids?" "Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about," Jessica continued. "I thought we could all go, you and Rachel, Sarah and Daniel. Make it a couples trip. Mom can watch the kids." There was a pause, and I held my breath, pies growing heavy in my arms. "All 8 of them? For how long?" Sarah asked, sounding hesitant. "Just 2 weeks," Jessica said casually, as if requesting someone water her plants. "We'd leave the 20th and come back after New Year's. Has anyone asked Mom about this?" Sarah again. Bless her. Michael laughed. "Come on, Sarah. What else does she have going on? She lives for this grandma stuff." "Exactly," Jessica chimed in. "And the twins have been driving me crazy lately. 12 going on 20, I swear. Mom's better with them than I am anyway." 2 weeks with all 8 kids, including Amelia? Sarah still sounded uncertain. "She's not even sleeping through the night yet." "Mom raised 3 of us. She can handle it," Michael said dismissively. "Besides, when was the last time any of us had a real vacation? We deserve this." "I suppose," Sarah said, her resistance crumbling. "Daniel has been saying we need time alone, especially after the year we've had with Amelia's colic and Ethan's potty training regression." "So we're agreed?" Jessica asked. "But let's not tell her it's all planned together. She might feel like we're taking advantage." "Which we totally are," Michael laughed. "But yeah, I'll tell her I have a big case and Rachel has a conference. She won't question it. I can say the hospital scheduled me for extra shifts," Sarah offered, her voice now fully committed to the deception. "Perfect," Jessica said. "I'll say David's mother is sick and we're going to visit. She'll never know we're all sipping margaritas together." "She never checks social media anyway," Michael added. "Remember when I posted about our Aspen trip last year and she still asked how work was going?" They all laughed at that, and the sound pierced my heart like ice picks. Not only were they planning to dump all the grandchildren on me, but they were going to lie about it and then mock my technological ineptitude. "Mom's so predictable," Jessica continued. "She'll probably be thrilled to have the kids. You know how she's always saying she misses when we were little. Now she gets her wish, times 8, plus free childcare for 2 weeks. Do you know how much 8 kids would cost with a sitter?" Michael said, always the pragmatic one. "Has anyone actually checked if she has plans?" Sarah asked. A final weak attempt at consideration. "Please," Jessica scoffed. "Her whole life revolves around us. What else would she possibly be doing at Christmas, except waiting for us to visit?" At that moment, one of the pies slipped slightly in my grip, and I had to readjust quickly to avoid a disaster. The movement must have made a noise because the kitchen went suddenly silent. "Mom?" Jessica called out. I took a deep breath, plastered a smile on my face, and walked into the kitchen as if I'd heard nothing. "Who wants pie?" I asked cheerfully, setting the desserts on the counter. They all looked momentarily guilty, but relief quickly washed over their faces when I gave no indication of having overheard their scheme. "You read our minds, Mom," Michael said, reaching for plates in the cabinet. As I cut perfect triangles of pumpkin pie, my hands steady despite my inner turmoil, I made a silent vow. This year, Christmas would come with a lesson none of my children would ever forget. The moment my front door closed behind the last of my departing family members Sunday afternoon, I picked up the phone and dialed Eleanor. "They're gone. Finally," I said when she answered. "How was it? Did the new cranberry sauce recipe work out?" Eleanor asked. The sauce was fine. The revelation that my children see me as nothing more than free childcare was less appetizing. I sank onto my sofa, suddenly exhausted. "Oh no. What happened?" Eleanor's voice filled with concern. I recounted the conversation I'd overheard, my voice occasionally breaking despite my efforts to remain calm. "Those ungrateful little..." Eleanor didn't finish the sentence. "What are you going to do about our cruise? Cancel it? Are you crazy? I've been looking forward to this for months." I replied with more force than I intended. After Thomas died, I'd spent the first year in a fog of grief, barely leaving the house except to help with the grandchildren. Eleanor, my friend since college, had practically dragged me to a community center art class, insisting I needed to get out of the house. There I'd met Judy, Barbara, and Maria, all women in their 60s, navigating the challenges of this new phase of life. We formed a tight-knit group, meeting weekly for book club, which quickly evolved into wine club, with occasional literary discussion. It was Barbara who first suggested the Christmas cruise. Her sister had taken one the year before and raved about it. "Imagine it," she'd said. 2 weeks of being pampered. No cooking, no cleaning, no responsibilities. Just sun, sea, and all the food and drinks we want. The idea had seemed outrageous at first. Christmas had always been a family affair with me at the center, cooking and organizing and making sure everyone had the perfect holiday. But as my children increasingly took my time and effort for granted, the cruise began to sound less like an indulgence and more like salvation. Richard had been the final push I needed. We'd met at the community garden where I volunteered, both of us tending tomato plants in adjacent plots. He was 70, a retired high school principal whose wife had passed away 7 years earlier. Our friendship had blossomed slowly into romance, both of us cautious after long marriages and painful losses. "You should go," he'd told me when I mentioned the cruise. "And I'd love to join you, if that wouldn't be too forward." It had taken courage to book the trip, to spend money on myself when I'd been so accustomed to putting everyone else first. But I'd done it, putting down the non-refundable deposit 6 months ago. I'd even bought new clothes, sundresses and bathing suits, and elegant evening wear for the formal nights on board. I'd mentioned the cruise to each of my children at least twice. Jessica, while showing me pictures of the twins' school play on her phone, "That reminds me, I won't be around much at Christmas. I'm going on a cruise," she'd muttered. "That's nice," Mom, without looking up. "Michael," during a quick coffee when he dropped the kids off one weekend. "I'm excited about my Christmas cruise with friends. First real vacation in years." He'd nodded vaguely while checking his email. Sarah, during a video call, "I've booked a Christmas cruise. 2 whole weeks away." She'd been distracted by Ethan having a meltdown off camera and simply said, "Sounds fun, Mom, I have to go." None of them had asked a single question about my plans. Not one. "So what's the plan?" Eleanor asked now, bringing me back to the present. "Are you going to tell them about the cruise?" I considered it briefly. The straightforward approach would be to simply inform them that I had plans and couldn't watch their children. But something inside me, perhaps the part that had listened to them mock my predictability and take advantage of my good nature, wanted more. "No," I said finally. "I'm not going to tell them. Margaret," Eleanor warned, knowing me too well. "I'll make arrangements for the kids," I assured her. I would never leave them in a bad situation. But my children need to learn that I'm a person, not just their mother or a convenient babysitter. "And how exactly do you plan to teach them this lesson?" Eleanor asked cautiously. I smiled, a plan already forming in my mind. "I'm thinking it's time my children discovered that their predictable old mother still has a few surprises left in her." As I hung up the phone, I walked to my bedroom and opened the closet door. There, protected by a garment bag, hung the formal dresses I'd purchased for the cruise's elegant evenings. Next to them was a new swimsuit, not the modest one-piece my children would expect, but a flattering turquoise tankini that Richard had said brought out the green in my eyes. On my dresser sat the cruise documents and the new passport I'd gotten specifically for this trip. I picked up a framed photo of Thomas and me on our 40th anniversary, the last one we'd celebrated before his diagnosis. "What do you think, Thomas?" I asked the photo. Am I being petty? I could almost hear his deep chuckle, the one that always came before he said something wise. Thomas had adored our children, but had never hesitated to set boundaries when needed. "They're adults now, Maggie," I imagined him saying. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions. I put down the photo and picked up my phone again. I had calls to make, arrangements to set in motion. My children thought they knew everything about their predictable old mother. They were about to discover how wrong they were. "She wants to do what?" Judy exclaimed, nearly spitting out her Chardonnay. Our weekly book club had convened at Eleanor's house the following Thursday. The 5 of us sat in her sunroom, a half-discussed novel forgotten, as I shared my dilemma and emerging plan. "Leave all 8 grandchildren with alternate care while she goes on our cruise anyway," Eleanor explained to the group. Without telling her kids beforehand, Barbara leaned forward, her silver bob swinging. "Margaret Thompson, you rebel. I never thought you had it in you. Is it terrible of me?" I asked, genuinely uncertain. Part of me feels like I should just tell them I have plans and be done with it. "After they laughed about taking advantage of you?" Maria shook her head, her queen's accent thickening with indignation. "Honey, they deserve whatever they get." Richard, who occasionally joined our book club meetings, placed a gentle hand on my arm. "I think you should consider simply telling them the truth, Margaret. Clear communication might be the simplest solution." The women all turned to give him matching looks of disapproval. "Men," Judy sighed dramatically, "always taking the path of least resistance." "It's not about resistance," Richard defended himself. "It's about treating adult children like adults." "But that's just it," I said quietly. "They're not treating me like an adult with my own life. They're treating me like a resource they can use whenever convenient." Eleanor nodded firmly. "Exactly. Sometimes a lesson needs to be more memorable than a conversation." "So what exactly are you planning?" Barbara asked, reaching for the wine bottle to refill her glass. "That's what I need help figuring out," I admitted. "I know I want to go on the cruise as planned, and I would never leave the grandchildren without proper care. But beyond that, I'm still working out the details." "You need Mary Jenkins," Maria declared. "Mary Jenkins?" I repeated. "Retired kindergarten teacher from my church," Maria explained. "She does professional childcare now for families needing extended help. Impeccable references, background checked, CPR certified, the works. And she loves Christmas with kids." I considered this, but could she handle all 8, including a 1-year-old? "Mary raised 6 children of her own," Maria said confidently. "And she often takes care of multiple families at once. She's like a grandma superhero." "I could help too," Judy offered. "I'm not leaving for my daughters until the 26th, and I'm right next door," Eleanor reminded me. I could check in daily, make sure everything's running smoothly. As my friends brainstormed, a multi-phase plan began taking shape. Phase 1 would be to appear completely normal when my children finally approached me with their requests. I would accept graciously, asking minimal questions to avoid arousing suspicion. Phase 2 involved hiring Mary Jenkins at a premium holiday rate, which I decided would later be billed to my children, and setting her up in my guest house. She would need time to review detailed care instructions for each child and become familiar with my home. Phase 3 would be creating extensive documentation, emergency contact lists, medical information, favorite foods, bedtime routines, comfort objects, everything a caregiver would need for each grandchild. Phase 4 involved preparations for the grandchildren themselves, Christmas decorations, presents, special activities, and meals they would enjoy. Despite my frustration with their parents, I wanted the children to have a wonderful holiday. Phase 5 would be my departure, slipping away early Christmas morning after making sure the children were comfortable with Mary, leaving a simple note for my adult children, explaining that competent care had been arranged. The final phase would be the most difficult but most necessary. turning off my phone and actually enjoying my vacation, trusting that everything at home was under control. "What about when you get back?" Richard asked, still looking concerned. "Have you thought about what happens then?" "The confrontation, you mean?" I sighed. "I'm hoping that by then, they'll have had time to reflect on their actions. Maybe they'll even understand my perspective. Or maybe they'll be furious," Barbara pointed out. "Probably both," Eleanor said pragmatically. "I'm willing to risk their anger," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "I've spent my entire adult life putting their needs first. I don't think it's too much to ask that they recognize I have needs too." Richard squeezed my hand. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Though I still think a conversation might be simpler." "Simpler, yes," I acknowledged. "But would it be effective? Would they really hear me, or would they just placate me in the moment and continue the same behavior later?" The room fell silent as everyone contemplated this. "Sometimes," Judy said finally, "people don't really understand a situation until they experience it themselves." "Exactly," I nodded. "My children need to experience, just once, what it feels like when someone prioritizes their own needs after years of self-sacrifice. Maybe then they'll understand why it hurt so much when they did it to me." Eleanor raised her glass. "To teaching grown children that their mother is a person too." As everyone clinked glasses, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The plan wasn't perfect, and part of me still worried about potential fallout. But for the first time in decades, I was choosing myself over the easy path of acquiescence. If you've ever reached that breaking point where you've given and given until there's nothing left, hit that subscribe button and share in the comments below. I'd love to know if you would have handled things differently. The conversation from our book club really helped me sort through my feelings sometimes. We all need that sounding board, don't we? Now, let me tell you what happened when my kids finally decided to spring their surprise on me. The Thanksgiving revelation was still fresh in my mind when Jessica called the following Tuesday, asking to meet for lunch. "Just us girls," she said with forced casualness. "I haven't had mom time in ages." We met at an overpriced bistro near her office, where Jessica ordered a salad she barely touched and spent the first 20 minutes talking about work stress and the twins' busy schedules. I nodded at appropriate intervals, waiting for her to get to the real purpose of our lunch. "So, Mom," she finally said, stirring her sparkling water, "David and I were thinking about Christmas." "Oh?" I took a bite of my sandwich, maintaining a neutral expression. "His mother isn't doing well, her arthritis, and we really should spend time with her in Florida." Jessica avoided eye contact, focusing intently on her drink. The twins would be bored to tears visiting an elderly relative, and it would be so much better for them to have a fun Christmas with you. "I see," I said, fighting to keep my face straight as I recalled her actual plans for a couples-only Bahamas vacation. "It would just be for 2 weeks," she continued quickly. "We'd drop them off on the 20th and pick them up after New Year's. They're really looking forward to spending time with their grandma." I doubted that last part. While I loved my grandchildren dearly, Jessica's twins were entering the phase where they found adults generally embarrassing, and grandparents particularly so. "That sounds fine, dear," I said, surprising myself with how easily the lie came. "I'd love to have Lucas and Lily for Christmas." Jessica's relief was palpable. "Really? That's great, Mom. Thank you so much. I'll email you their schedules and any special instructions." As Jessica launched into a detailed list of Lily's dietary preferences and Lucas's gaming time limits, I nodded along, thinking about the cruise embarkation documents sitting in my desk drawer at home. 2 days later, Michael showed up unannounced at my door, holding a beautifully wrapped gift and wearing the charming smile he'd used since childhood when he wanted something. "Mom, you look great," he said, kissing my cheek as he stepped inside. "New haircut?" "No, Michael. Same hair I've had for months," I replied, accepting the gift. "What's this for? Can't a son bring his mother a present just because?" He followed me into the kitchen, where I was preparing dinner. "What are you cooking? Smells amazing." "Lasagna. Would you like to stay? There's plenty." "I wish I could, but I have to get back soon. Rachel has a thing tonight." He leaned against the counter, watching me chop vegetables. "So, Mom, I hate to ask this, but we have a situation with Christmas." "Oh?" I continued chopping methodically. "I have this massive case that's going to trial right after the holidays, and Rachel has a professional conference. We're both going to be working crazy hours." He ran a hand through his hair. the picture of stress. We were hoping Emma and Jack could stay with you for a couple weeks, starting around the 20th. It would be a huge help. I set down my knife and turned to face him. Of course, Michael. I'd be happy to have them. Really? The relief on his face was almost comical. That's great, Mom. You're a lifesaver. I assume Sarah's children will be joining us as well? I asked innocently. Michael froze momentarily before recovering. Oh, I think Sarah mentioned something about extra hospital shifts. But you should ask her. I will, I promised, turning back to my cutting board to hide my smile. Michael left shortly after, having barely discussed any details about his children's care, beyond mentioning Jack's soccer tournament schedule. Sarah, at least, had the decency to sound genuinely conflicted when she called the next evening. Mom, her voice was tight with stress. I hate to even ask this, but Daniel and I are in a really tough spot with Christmas. The hospital scheduled me for a string of shifts, and Daniel has that conference in Chicago. I could hear baby Amelia fussing in the background and Ethan asking repeatedly for juice. Let me guess, I interrupted gently. You need me to take the children from the 20th until after New Year's? There was a pause. How did you know? Jessica and Michael already asked if their kids could stay with me during that time, I explained. They did? Sarah sounded genuinely surprised, then quickly covered. I mean, yes, they mentioned they might. So, would that be okay? All 8 kids? I know it's a lot, especially with Amelia still being so little. Unlike her siblings, Sarah at least seemed to recognize the magnitude of what she was asking. I could hear the guilt in her voice. Don't worry about it, Sarah, I said soothingly. I raised 3 of you, didn't I? 8 grandchildren will be a joyful houseful. Are you sure, Mom? Because if it's too much. It's Christmas, I said, imbuing my voice with grandmotherly warmth. What could be better than having all my grandchildren under one roof? You're amazing, Mom. Truly. Sarah sounded close to tears. We'll make it up to you somehow. Just enjoy your hospital shifts, I replied, unable to keep a hint of dryness from my tone. But Sarah was too relieved to notice. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table and opened the notebook where I'd begun making preparations. All 3 children had taken the bait, not one of them questioning whether I might have my own plans or checking if the others had already asked me to babysit. Not one had offered compensation or acknowledged the enormity of caring for 8 children alone. Not one had even asked if I wanted to spend Christmas this way. Their assumption that I would be available, that I should be available, stung afresh. But it also strengthened my resolve. Mary Jenkins was coming for an interview tomorrow. Eleanor had helped me create detailed care packets for each grandchild. Richard had arranged for his nephew, a college student studying hospitality, to house-sit while we were gone. Everything was falling into place. As I reviewed my lists, I felt a momentary pang of guilt. Was I being petty? Vindictive? But then I remembered Jessica's casual, what else would she possibly be doing at Christmas, except waiting for us to visit, and Michael's dismissive. She lives for this grandma stuff. No, this wasn't about revenge. This was about respect. This was about my children finally seeing me as a complete person with my own life, not just their mother. I opened my laptop and checked my flight status. In less than a month, I would be on a plane to Miami, embarking on a well-deserved vacation, while my children learned a valuable lesson about taking people for granted. I only hoped our relationships would survive the teaching moment. The 2 weeks before Christmas passed in a flurry of preparations, both for my departure and for the grandchildren's care. Mary Jenkins exceeded all expectations during our interview. At 62, she had the energy of someone decades younger, coupled with the wisdom and patience that came from raising 6 children of her own and teaching kindergarten for 30 years. Her references were glowing, her background check spotless, and her approach to childcare aligned perfectly with my own philosophy, structured but loving, firm but kind. Children thrive on routine and clear boundaries, she told me as we sat in my kitchen drinking tea. But they also need warmth and understanding. Balance is key. I hired her on the spot, offering well above her usual rate for the holiday coverage. When I explained the situation with my children, she didn't judge but simply nodded in understanding. Sometimes parents need reminders that grandparents are people too, she said. Don't worry about the children. They'll have a wonderful Christmas. Mary would stay in my guest house, a converted garage with its own bathroom and kitchenette. It offered her privacy while keeping her close to the main house. We agreed she would come over the day before the grandchildren arrived to familiarize herself with the home layout and review all the information I'd prepared. And there was a lot of information to prepare. I created detailed files for each grandchild. For Lucas and Lily, allergies, none. Medication, Lily's occasional migraine medicine. Favorite foods, Lucas loved anything with cheese. Lily was going through a vegetarian phase. Bedtime routines. Both required their own reading time before lights out. And current interests. Lucas was obsessed with astronomy. Lily was deeply into manga art. For Emma and Jack, Jack's soccer schedule, 2 holiday camp sessions. Emma's reading list for school, their shared iPad restrictions, 2 hours daily, parental controls enabled. Jack's peanut allergy, mild, but requiring vigilance. And Emma's tendency toward nightmares, nightlight required, gentle waking if she seemed distressed. For Sarah's brood, Sophia's ballet practice video schedule, she was determined not to fall behind during the break. Noah's comfort object, a well-worn blue rabbit named Hoppy, Ethan's potty training progress, good days and bad days, and Amelia's detailed feeding and napping schedule, plus notes on her favorite songs for soothing and signs she might be teething. I also compiled a master household document, emergency contacts, pediatricians, neighbors, family friends, location of first aid supplies, house quirks, the temperamental upstairs bathroom faucet, the finicky back door lock, and various passwords and access codes the children might need for TV streaming services and the home security system. Eleanor thought I was being excessive. Mary's not going to have time to read all this, she warned, as she watched me label yet another color-coded folder. Better to have too much information than too little, I replied. Besides, it's therapeutic. Helps me feel like I'm not completely abandoning them. Meanwhile, I was also preparing my home for Christmas. Despite my planned absence, I wanted the children to have a magical holiday. I put up the tree and decorated every room. I wrapped individual presents for each grandchild and labeled them carefully. I stocked the freezer with kid-friendly meals and the pantry with their favorite snacks. I arranged for a grocery delivery service to bring fresh items twice weekly. I made lists of possible activities: holiday movie marathons, cookie baking sessions, craft projects, board games. I researched local events suitable for different age groups: a children's theater production of The Nutcracker, a holiday light display at the Botanical Gardens, a winter carnival at the community center. You're doing more preparation for a Christmas you won't even be here for than you've done in years, Richard observed as he helped me assemble a gingerbread house kit. I want them to have wonderful memories, I said defensively. This isn't about punishing the grandchildren for their parents' thoughtlessness. Richard kissed my cheek. I know that. You're a good grandmother, Margaret. And you'll be an even better one when you've had some time to refresh and recharge. Barbara came over to help me pack for the cruise, insisting I needed at least 3 more swimsuits than I'd purchased. The Caribbean sun is different, she insisted, though I wasn't convinced she had any more tropical experience than I did. Judy helped me program my new smartphone, a purchase I'd made specifically for the trip, but hadn't mentioned to my children. You'll want to take plenty of pictures, she said, showing me how to use the camera features. For yourself, not social media, she added with a wink. I arranged for Richard's nephew, Kyle, to check on the house periodically while we were gone. He would collect mail, water plants, and ensure everything was running smoothly. At 22, he was responsible and mature, studying hotel management and working part-time at a local resort. I gave him Mary's contact information as well as a spare key and alarm code. My neighbor Barbara, not book club Barbara, but Barbara Wilson from 3 doors down, agreed to be on call for any household emergencies. Her husband Dan was handy with repairs, and they had grandchildren of their own who sometimes played with mine. As a final precaution, I contacted the parents of my grandchildren's friends, explaining that I would be watching the children over the holidays and providing Mary's information. I didn't mention my planned absence, that revelation would come later, but I wanted to ensure playdates and activities could continue smoothly. The day before the children were set to arrive, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the cruise document spread before me. Doubt crept in again. Was I making a terrible mistake? Would this irreparably damage my relationship with my children? Would the grandchildren feel abandoned? I picked up the phone to call Eleanor, needing her reassurance, but placed it back down without dialing. This was my decision to make. Instead, I wrote a letter to each of my adult children, explaining my feelings and the reasons for my actions. I didn't plan to leave these letters. A simple note stating Mary was in charge would suffice for the immediate situation, but writing them helped clarify my thoughts. Perhaps I would share them later, when tempers had cooled and hearts were open to understanding. Mary arrived that afternoon, suitcase in hand and a calm smile on her face. We spent hours reviewing all my prepared materials, touring the house, and discussing each child's needs and personalities. "I think we're as ready as we'll ever be," she said, finally. I nodded, both terrified and exhilarated by what I was about to do. "Yes, I believe we are." That night, I slept fitfully, dreaming of missed flights and crying grandchildren. But when I woke, I felt strangely calm. The die was cast, the plan was in motion. And for better or worse, this Christmas would be unlike any our family had experienced before. The children began arriving the morning of December 20th, Jessica's silver SUV pulling into my driveway first at precisely 8 a.m. She emerged looking polished in designer travel wear, large sunglasses perched on her head despite the winter gray. "Mom, we made good time," she called, opening the back door for the twins. Lucas and Lily tumbled out, immediately engrossed in their phones, responding to their mother's goodbye instructions with non-committal grunts. "I've emailed you their schedules," Jessica said, handing over 2 rolling suitcases. "Lily has a Zoom call with her art mentor on the 22nd. It's all in the calendar invite I sent you. Lucas needs to practice his science presentation at least 3 times before school starts again." I nodded, accepting the luggage. "We'll manage." "How's David's mother doing?" I asked innocently. Jessica blinked, momentarily confused before remembering her cover story. "Oh, not great, honestly. We're worried about her." She glanced at her watch. "I should get going. Our flight's at noon." "To Florida," I clarified. "Right, Florida." Jessica gave me a quick hug. "Thanks again, Mom. You're a lifesaver." The twins finally looked up as their mother prepared to leave. Lily, going through a phase where parental affection was mortifying, allowed Jessica a brief one-armed hug. Lucas offered a fist bump instead. "Be good for Grandma," Jessica instructed, before sliding back into her SUV and pulling away with a quick wave. So, I turned to my grandchildren. "Who's hungry for breakfast?" Lucas finally put his phone down. "Did you make those cinnamon roll things? The ones that smell like heaven and taste like Christmas?" I smiled. "They're in the oven." That earned me the first genuine smile of the day. Michael arrived next, pulling up in his luxury sedan an hour later with Emma and Jack arguing in the back seat. He looked harried, his tie slightly askew beneath his expensive coat. "Mom, thank you," he said, popping the trunk to reveal 2 duffel bags and what appeared to be half a sporting goods store for Jack's soccer equipment. "We're running late for the airport. Rachel's already there checking in." "For your conference," I said mildly. "Right, my conference." Michael ran a hand through his hair. "Jack has soccer camp on Monday and Wednesday. Emma needs to practice piano daily. There's a recital right after break." "I know, Michael. You texted me the schedule 3 times. He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Right. Sorry. It's just a crazy time." Emma emerged from the car, a book clutched to her chest. "Hi, Grandma. Are Lucas and Lily already here?" In the kitchen, having cinnamon rolls, I confirmed, earning another smile. Jack bounded out next, soccer ball under one arm. "Can I use the backyard to practice?" "After breakfast, I promised." "Say goodbye to your father." Michael hugged his children quickly. "Be good, guys. Listen to Grandma. I'll call to check in when I can." As he drove away, I noticed he was already on his phone, presumably coordinating with Jessica and Sarah about their actual joint vacation. Sarah arrived last, her minivan packed to the brim with 4 children, countless bags, a travel crib, multiple stuffed animals, and what appeared to be enough diapers to supply a small hospital. "Mom," she said when I opened her door, looking near tears, "I can't thank you enough." Unlike her siblings, Sarah's guilt seemed genuine. She handed baby Amelia to me, the little one immediately reaching for my familiar face. "Daniel's already left for his conference," she explained as we began unloading children and baggage. "I have to go straight to the hospital for my shift." 7-year-old Sophia, always the little mother, was already organizing her brothers. "Noah, hold Ethan's hand. Don't run off." Noah clutched his blue rabbit in one hand and Ethan's pudgy fingers in the other. "Grandma, do you have cookies?" he asked hopefully. In the cookie jar, I confirmed. After you've had proper breakfast, while Sarah retrieved the seemingly endless parade of necessities from the van, I settled Amelia on my hip and guided the older children inside. Lucas! Lily! Sophia called excitedly upon seeing her cousins. Despite the age gap, the cousins got along remarkably well. Lucas immediately showed Noah his new game, while Lily complimented Sophia on her sparkly hair clip. Everyone here already? Sarah asked, finally bringing in the last of the bags. You're the last to arrive, I confirmed. Sarah looked momentarily puzzled. That's weird. I thought Michael and Jessica weren't dropping off until later. They must have had early flights, I said neutrally. Sarah nodded absently, then launched into Amelia's current schedule information I already had in duplicate from her texts and emails. She's been fussy with teething, and her nap schedule is critical. She gets catastrophically overtired if she misses her morning nap. Sarah, I interrupted gently. We'll be fine. I raised you, remember? She smiled weakly. I know, Mom. It's just all 8 of them at once. Are you sure you can manage? For a brief moment, I considered telling her the truth, then and there. But the sound of children laughing in the kitchen, the mess of bags still to unpack, and the knowledge that the other 2 were already well on their way to their deception stayed my tongue. Don't worry about us, I assured her. We'll have a wonderful Christmas. After final hugs and kisses, endless last-minute instructions, and promises to call, Sarah finally departed. As her minivan disappeared down the street, I closed the front door and leaned against it, surveying the cheerful chaos that had overtaken my home. 8 children, ranging from 1 to 12 years old, were now officially in my care. Or rather, soon to be in Mary's care. Mary had tactfully made herself scarce during the drop-offs, remaining in the guest house until needed. We had agreed that I would spend the day with the grandchildren, helping them settle in and adjust to being together before introducing Mary that evening. And so I did. We spent a joyful, exhausting day unpacking, organizing sleeping arrangements, decorating Christmas cookies, and watching holiday movies. I treasured each moment, knowing it would be my last day with them for 2 weeks. After dinner, with everyone gathered in the living room for hot chocolate and more Christmas movies, I finally introduced Mary. Children, I want you to meet someone special, I said, as Mary entered from the kitchen where she'd been waiting. This is Miss Mary. She's going to be helping us during the holidays. 8 pairs of eyes regarded her with varying levels of interest and suspicion. Are you a babysitter? Lucas asked bluntly. I'm a childcare professional, Mary answered with a warm smile. And a former kindergarten teacher. Do you know how to make Christmas cookies? Noah inquired, getting to the heart of what mattered most to him. I have a secret recipe for snowball cookies that are magical, Mary promised. We can make them tomorrow if you'd like. This seemed to satisfy most of the children, though Lily, at 12, gave me a curious look. Why do we need a babysitter if you're here, Grandma? I'd prepared for this question. Miss Mary is here to help because taking care of 8 wonderful, energetic children is a big job, even for a grandma. And she has special training that I don't have, like teaching art, which I know you love, Lily. This explanation seemed to satisfy her, and soon Mary was integrated into the evening routine, helping with baths for the little ones, while I supervised toothbrushing and bedtime stories. Later, when all the children were finally asleep, Mary and I sat at the kitchen table reviewing the next day's plan. You've done a wonderful job preparing everything, Mary assured me. The children will be perfectly fine. I nodded, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in my stomach. I've left emergency contacts on the refrigerator. Eleanor will check in daily. Barbara next door has a spare key. Kyle will handle mail and household issues. The pediatrician's numbers are... Margaret, Mary interrupted gently. Everything is covered. The children will have a magical Christmas. And you deserve this vacation. I took a deep breath. You're right. I know you're right. Now go finish packing, Mary said. You have an early start tomorrow. That night, I laid out the simple note I would leave for my children on the kitchen counter. Mary Jenkins is in charge. See you in 2 weeks. Merry Christmas. Next to it, I placed Mary's credentials, references, and contact information, along with Eleanor's number and the detailed care packets for each child. My alarm was set for 4 a.m. Richard would pick me up at 4:30. Our flight to Miami departed at 7:15. As I drifted off to sleep, I wondered what my children's faces would look like when they discovered their mother had finally put herself first. The early morning darkness wrapped around me like a cocoon as I wheeled my suitcase quietly through the sleeping house. Mary was already awake, a cup of coffee in hand, sitting at the kitchen counter. "All set?" she asked softly. I nodded, taking a final glance around my home. Christmas decorations glittered in the dim light, presents nestled under the tree, stockings hung with care. Everything was prepared for a perfect holiday. I simply wouldn't be part of it. "The children will be fine," Mary reassured me again, sensing my hesitation. "And so will you." Richard's headlights flashed in the driveway, right on time. I placed my note prominently on the counter, took a deep breath, and stepped into the cold December morning. The drive to the airport passed in contemplative silence, Richard occasionally squeezing my hand supportively. By the time we boarded our flight to Miami, the sun was just beginning to rise, painting the horizon in brilliant oranges and pinks. It felt symbolic somehow, a new day, a new chapter. "Second thoughts?" Richard asked as we settled into our seats. "Many," I admitted, "but no regrets." While our plane taxied down the runway, I imagined the scene unfolding at my house, grandchildren waking excited for another day of Christmas activities, Mary serving breakfast, everyone blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. Jessica would be the first to call, I predicted. Probably around 10 a.m. when she realized she hadn't heard from me with an update on the twins. When the call went to voicemail, she might try again, mildly annoyed but not yet concerned. Michael would likely check in later, perhaps early afternoon. 3 or 4 missed calls might begin to worry him. Sarah, ever the anxious mother of 4, would probably start calling by lunchtime when she hadn't received any pictures of baby Amelia. By evening, with mounting unanswered calls and texts, they would begin calling each other, comparing notes, their concern growing. And then one of them, probably Jessica, would call Eleanor, my most obvious emergency contact. I had asked Eleanor to play dumb until evening, giving me time to reach the cruise ship and settle in. After that, she was free to explain that I had prior plans, that qualified childcare had been arranged, and that I would be unavailable by phone for the duration of my trip. The reality played out almost exactly as I had imagined, though I didn't learn the details until later. According to Eleanor, Jessica discovered my note around 11:30 a.m. when she called, and receiving no answer, asked Lucas to find me in the house. The boy returned to the phone reporting that some lady named Mary was making lunch and said Grandma had gone on vacation. Jessica, in disbelief, drove straight to the house from the Bahamas resort, where she'd been about to meet Michael and Sarah's families for a poolside lunch. Mary, with perfect composure, had shown Jessica my note, her credentials, and the detailed care instructions I'd prepared for each child. She explained that I had booked my cruise 6 months earlier and had arranged professional childcare well in advance of their requests. But she agreed to watch the kids. Jessica had protested. She never mentioned any cruise. "Perhaps she was waiting for you to ask about her plans," Mary had suggested mildly. Michael and Sarah, upon being frantically contacted by Jessica, had abandoned their vacation plans and rushed to my house as well, arriving late that night. Eleanor, who had gone over to observe the unfolding drama, reported that the 3 of them had sat shell-shocked at my kitchen table, surrounded by the evidence of my careful planning. "You should have seen their faces," Eleanor told me later, over the ship's satellite phone. "It was like watching someone's entire worldview crumble in real time." "Mom has a boyfriend?" Michael had apparently exclaimed upon finding a photo of Richard and me that Mary had thoughtfully displayed. "Mom takes art classes?" Sarah had marveled, discovering my watercolor supplies in the study. "Mom has friends who go on cruises?" Jessica had muttered, examining the itinerary I'd left behind. The children, meanwhile, were reportedly thriving under Mary's care, barely noticing the adults' distress as they enjoyed Christmas movies and cookies. My adult children had spent that first night in crisis mode, calling airlines to cancel their remaining vacation days, arranging emergency time off from the jobs they'd claimed required their presence, and attempting to reach me through increasingly desperate voicemails. "Mom, where are you? Call us immediately." Jessica. "Mom, what the hell? You can't just leave like this." Michael. "Mom, please call back. We're worried about you." Sarah. When Eleanor finally confirmed I was safe and simply enjoying a planned vacation, their concern had shifted rapidly to indignation. She deliberately deceived us. Jessica had apparently ranted. She let us think she was available when she knew she wasn't, Michael had complained. Only Sarah, according to Eleanor, had shown a glimmer of understanding. We kind of did the same thing to her, though, didn't we? She had said quietly. We all lied about working when we were actually going on vacation. Their initial plan, Eleanor reported, was to fire Mary, cancel my cruise somehow, and force me to return. But reality quickly set in. Mary was clearly competent and already beloved by the children. My cruise was non-refundable and already underway. And most importantly, they had no actual authority to make decisions on my behalf. So instead, they had done what parents do. They'd adapted. Jessica had taken over the guest house, setting up a remote workstation to handle actual work emergencies while helping with the older children. Michael had assumed responsibility for transportation, shuttling kids to activities and play dates. Sarah had focused on baby Amelia and toddler Ethan, the most demanding of the bunch. Mary, wise woman that she was, had graciously allowed them to feel useful while maintaining her role as primary caregiver. They're actually learning quite a lot, she had told Eleanor with a knowing smile. As the days passed and my silence continued, I had decided to check messages only every third day to truly disconnect. Their anger had apparently evolved into something more nuanced. Jessica had discovered my book club reading list and been surprised by the challenging titles. I thought she just read cozy mysteries, she had remarked to Eleanor. Michael had found the thank you cards from the literacy center where I volunteered. Stunned to learn I'd been teaching adults to read twice weekly for years. Sarah had uncovered photo albums documenting my trips with friends, community garden participation, and art show entries, a whole life her medical career had left her too busy to notice. By Christmas Eve, 1 week into my absence, the tide had begun to turn. Eleanor reported receiving calls from each of my children, separately, asking questions about my life, my activities, my hopes and dreams. Did Mom tell you she was dating someone? Has Mom always been interested in watercolors? Does Mom actually enjoy watching all 8 kids at once? While I floated in the Caribbean, under perfect blue skies, sipped tropical drinks with Richard and our friends, and enjoyed freedom from responsibility for the first time in decades, my children were apparently experiencing their own awakening. I think they're finally seeing you as a person, Eleanor told me during our last satellite call before the ship entered an area with limited connectivity. Not just their mother. I smiled, feeling both vindicated and slightly guilty. That was the point, wasn't it? It was, Eleanor agreed. And for what it's worth, I think Thomas would be proud of you. As I hung up the phone and rejoined Richard on the deck, I wondered what awaited me when I returned home. Would my children be furious, understanding? Had I permanently damaged our relationships, or opened the door to healthier ones? Only time would tell. But for now, with the warm sun on my face and the gentle rocking of the ship beneath me, I allowed myself to simply exist, not as a mother, not as a grandmother, but as Margaret Thompson, a woman rediscovering herself. If you've ever been caught between your own needs and family expectations, you're not alone. Drop a comment below about a time when you had to choose yourself, even when it was difficult. Was there a moment when you realized your family saw you as a role rather than a person? I'd love to hear your stories. Make sure you like this video and subscribe for more real-life family stories that might just help you navigate your own relationships. Now, let's see how everything wrapped up when I finally returned home. The cruise ship docked in Miami on January 3rd, exactly 2 weeks after I'd departed. As Richard and I disembarked, I felt transformed, rested, renewed, and strangely confident. My tan skin and slightly lighter hair, courtesy of the sun and sea, matched my lighter spirit. Ready to face the music? Richard asked, as our taxi pulled away from the port. Oddly enough, I am, I replied. Whatever happens, at least I'll know I finally stood up for myself. Our flight back was uneventful, and by late afternoon, Richard was dropping me off at my home. The Christmas decorations were still up, though the tree looked slightly bedraggled, and several cars were parked in the driveway. All 3 of my children were waiting. I took a deep breath and opened the front door. Grandma, came a chorus of young voices as 6 of my grandchildren rushed toward me. Baby Amelia, being carried by Sarah, simply gurgled happily, while teenage Lily maintained her cool distance but smiled genuinely. I was enveloped in hugs, bombarded with stories about their Christmas adventures, and pulled toward the kitchen where apparently Mary had helped them prepare a welcome home dinner. "We made your favorite lasagna," Jack announced proudly. "I grated all the cheese." "And I made the salad," Sophia added, not to be outdone. Amid the chaos of excited children, I caught sight of my 3 adult children standing awkwardly in the dining room doorway. Jessica looked uncharacteristically disheveled. Michael had apparently forgotten to shave for several days, and Sarah had dark circles under her eyes. All 3 regarded me with expressions that mingled relief, residual anger, and something that might have been newfound respect. Mary appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Welcome home, Margaret. We've been having a wonderful time, but the children missed you tremendously." She gave me a subtle wink. "I'll get these little ones washed up for dinner while you catch up." With impressive efficiency, she herded the grandchildren upstairs, leaving me alone with Jessica, Michael, and Sarah. An awkward silence fell. "You look," Jessica finally said, "different." "Rested," I suggested. "Tan," Michael added. "Happy," Sarah said quietly. I set down my purse and faced them. "I am all 3. Another silence stretched between us before they all started speaking at once. "Why didn't you just tell us?" "We were worried sick." "You could have called more." I held up my hand. "Perhaps we should sit down for this conversation." We moved to the living room, the 3 of them perching uncomfortably on the sofa while I took my favorite armchair. "I owe you an explanation," I began. "Damn right you though," Michael muttered it. "Michael," Sarah admonished. I took a deep breath. "I overheard your conversation at Thanksgiving, about dumping the kids with me while you all vacationed together, about lying to me about where you were going." Their faces registered shock, then guilt. "Mom," Jessica started. "Please let me finish," I said firmly. "That conversation hurt me deeply. Not just the deception, but the casual way you discussed taking advantage of me, as if my time had no value, as if I existed solely to serve your needs." They exchanged uncomfortable glances. "I'd mentioned my cruise plans to each of you multiple times over the past 6 months. None of you even remembered. None of you ever asked about my life, my plans, my happiness. I became invisible to you, just Grandma, available whenever needed." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "We didn't realize." "No, you didn't," I agreed, "and telling you didn't seem sufficient. You needed to experience what it felt like to have your plans upended, to discover someone you counted on had other priorities." Michael leaned forward, his expression troubled. "So this was punishment?" "Not punishment, education." I met his gaze steadily. "And I notice you're all here now, despite your supposedly unmissable work commitments." Jessica had the grace to look ashamed. "That was wrong of us. The lying." "It was," I agreed. "Just as it was wrong of me not to be direct about my plans. The difference is, I tried to tell you about my cruise multiple times. You chose not to listen." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of truth settling around us. "I want to be clear about something," I continued. "I love being your mother. I love being a grandmother to your children. But that's not all I am. I'm also Margaret Thompson, a woman with her own friends, interests, and yes, even romance in her life." "Richard seems nice," Sarah offered tentatively. "Mary mentioned you've been dating for a while." "Almost a year," I confirmed. "He makes me very happy." "You've never really dated anyone since Dad died," Michael observed. "You never asked," I pointed out gently. Another uncomfortable silence fell. "So where do we go from here?" Jessica finally asked, practical as always. "Forward, I hope," I said, with new understanding and better boundaries. Over dinner, a somewhat chaotic affair with all 8 grandchildren sharing stories of their Christmas adventures, we began the tentative process of redefining our relationships. Mary joined us, adding her own observations about the children's delightful personalities and the parents' growing childcare skills. "You should have seen your mother," she told Michael when Jack described a gingerbread house disaster. "Stayed calm as could be, helped them salvage it completely. You inherited that from her, the way you handled Emma's project meltdown." These small recognitions of inherited traits, shared qualities, and connected experiences gradually thawed the remaining tension. After the children were in bed, Mary discreetly retired to the guest house, leaving us adults to continue our conversation over coffee and leftover Christmas cookies. "We found the photo albums," Sarah admitted. From your art classes and community garden and trips with friends, you've built this whole life we knew nothing about. Because we never asked, Jessica added, the realization seemingly still fresh. We just assumed you were, waiting around for us to need you, which was incredibly self-centered of us, Michael concluded. I smiled at them, feeling a surge of love despite everything. You're still learning how to see me as a complete person, not just your mother. It's a transition many adult children struggle with. We want to do better, Sarah said earnestly. We've been talking about it a lot these past 2 weeks. We're setting up a family calendar, Jessica explained, for childcare requests, family events, everything. And we'll include your schedule too, your classes, volunteer work, dates with Richard. And we'll stick to it, Michael promised. No more last-minute dumping of kids unless it's a genuine emergency. And we'd like to get to know Richard better, Sarah added. Maybe a dinner next week? All of us? I felt tears prick my eyes at their evident sincerity. I'd like that very much. As the evening wound down and my children prepared to collect their respective children and head home, Jessica paused at the door. Mom, I just want to say, I get it now. Why you did this. And while I wish you'd handled it differently, I'm glad you stood up for yourself. Michael nodded agreement. You raised us to be independent and speak our minds. I guess we shouldn't be surprised when you do the same. Sarah hugged me tightly. We love you, Mom. Not just for what you do for us, but for who you are. After they left, I sat in my quiet living room, reflecting on the past 2 weeks and the unexpected outcomes of my unconventional decision. Had it been the right choice? The perfect solution? Probably not. But it had accomplished what years of hints, suggestions, and requests had failed to do. It had made my children see me as a person in my own right. As I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a text message from Richard. How did it go? Still on for breakfast tomorrow? I smiled as I typed my reply. Better than expected. And yes, to breakfast. I have big news to share. The big news was something I hadn't yet told anyone, not Eleanor, not my children, not even Mary. During our cruise, on New Year's Eve under a sky full of stars, Richard had proposed. At 68 years old, I was engaged to be married again. And this time, when I shared my happiness with my family, I knew they would truly see me, not just as mom or grandma, but as Margaret Thompson, a woman embracing her second chance at love and life. Thank you all for joining me for this story about standing up for yourself and teaching your family to see you as a whole person. If you've enjoyed this journey with me, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding joy in life's second acts. I'd love to know. Have you ever had to teach your family a difficult but necessary lesson? Or have you been on the receiving end of one? Share your experiences in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most beautiful new beginnings. And remember, it's never too late to remind your loved ones and yourself that you're more than the roles you play in other people's lives. You're a complete person deserving of respect, recognition, and the occasional Caribbean cruise. Until next time, this is Margaret Thompson, signing off with love and gratitude for each and every one of you.